Good afternoon. Welcome to our session. We have Enjoy History, Discover Careers. I am an assistant professor here in the Department of History. My name is Jonathan Nash, and I feel extremely fortunate to be sitting at a table with alumni who are here to share their wisdom with you. We have with us Tyler Kinsella. He's a 2011 graduate of St. John's University, and he's currently a collections assistant at the Scott County Historical Society. And we have Ann Caller, class of 2010, and she's a program and staffing manager at Wilderness Inquiry. And we have Brandon Overman, class of 2004. He's a financial representative with Northwestern Mutual. And we have Andrew Kleinendorst, class of 2010, Prevention and Non-Discrimination Program Manager with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. So right now what I'd like to do is hand the panel over to the panelists, and perhaps they will be able to introduce themselves a little bit more thoroughly, let us know how they chose a major, and then perhaps briefly tell us how they arrived at their current position, or sort of their career trajectory so far. Tyler?
Tyler Kinsella, as you already said. I'm originally from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Decided to come up here to St. John's. Originally started as a history poli-sci double major, ended up figuring out I was a little bit more passionate about history and political science. Focused on that, got a minor in German. Let's see here. I graduated in 2011. I took 2 years off after school because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with myself. So ended up applying to grad schools, went to Washington State University, got a master's there in public history. Now, like I said, I work at Scott County Historical Society as a collections assistant, and right now I'm on a grant-funded position processing a bunch of 40,000 photographs of a prominent Scott County photographer, but I also do a lot of design work, collections care, research for blogs, articles, and stuff like that we do here in Scott County. What else is there? Yeah, and that's how I got to where I'm at. I guess pass my
Great. I'm Ann, and I came in undecided at St. Ben's. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I took a variety of classes, and my first semester I had a history class with Dr. Benedict, and we watched a movie and wrote a paper on it. And on the back of my paper he wrote, "Have you ever considered a history major?" And I was like, yeah, I can watch movies and write papers. Great! Which of course is not what it's all about. But it just I was really intrigued by my history classes. I loved the stories and how people's stories kind of shape history and impact us today. So that put me on my trajectory. I also majored in French and had a minor in psychology, so I just kind of dabbled a bit, which then also applies to after college. I resonate with you. I didn't really, again, know what I wanted to do with myself, so I did a year of volunteer service. I nannied for a year. I taught in France for a year, and then throughout all of that, I worked at Wilderness Inquiry, where I work now, leading outdoor trips and doing outdoor education. And that was kind of the first time I realized that you could tie education to the outdoors. You work outdoors for a living. It's great. And history also really tied into a big piece of that as well, with environmental education and kind of history of our land. So I went back and got my master's in outdoor education, and came back to Minnesota, landed at Wilderness Inquiry, and here I sit before you. So, yeah.
So I'm Brandon Overman. I came to St. John's all the way from Albany, Minnesota. So right now I live in Dayton with my wife Lisa, who is a Benny. We both graduated in 2004. We have 3 little girls. My path to the history major was initially I started out I wanted to be a teacher, so I was going down the social study teacher path. I think it was probably my sophomore year where I went and I shadowed at Aldi with a teacher of mine and had a hard time staying focused during the class. Like, I don't know that I want to do this and deal with the students. And then one of my teachers at the time said, "Brandon, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing here." He goes, "You don't want to be here, do you?" I'm like, "I don't think so." But in the course time getting up to that, I had history courses. I spent a lot of time with Annette Atkins when she was here in my classes. I really enjoyed it. I always had a passion for history. So I stayed on that course thinking, well, I don't know what it's going to lead to, but I had a number of other courses here, like liberal arts education. I've got a communications minor, and I knew I'd find a path, and I wanted to spend time here learning and doing things that I really enjoyed. So there's a thought potentially of going to law school after graduating, and I wasn't necessarily on the ball of the application process. So then I got a job where I was actually an individual contributor in a short-term disability claims office. Certainly not the position anyone dreams of ending up at. But I was there, and I just worked hard. So that's the advice I give everyone. I just worked hard to figure out what I actually wanted to do. So I worked hard there. I got promoted. I was eventually managing the people who also were doing the job I started and also didn't want to do that forever. So that was a very non-motivating experience. I realized I didn't want to do that. Then I harkened back to what did I do when I was in school and I was really excited. Well, first, I wanted to become a teacher because I enjoyed educating people. And I love history because everyone has a story, right? And in our studies, we learn about what did the circumstances of this person's world, what did that produce in terms of actions, and how did that impact everything else? And I wanted some level of entrepreneurship and business ownership. So then I became a financial advisor, which encompasses a lot of those things. It's not, so looking at a panelist of history majors and you see someone's a financial advisor, that usually is not a direct connection, I would assume, right? You're thinking? You think econ and things of that sort. Well, I know numbers, and I really appreciate that stuff, and I've always had an appreciation for it. But the core tenet of what I do as a financial advisor is listen to people's stories. Figure out where they are today, where do they want to be, what are the things that have happened in their life that shape them to get them to the point that they are. Analyze that, make assumptions and inferences about what they should be doing, where they need to be, and help them get there, and educate them along the way. So that fit perfectly with my studies here, what I got good at in my history courses, and without really realizing it, it positioned me really perfectly to do it. So that's the convoluted journey to now running a financial planning practice and helping other people do that in their lives.
Great. All right, I'm Andy Flanderhurst. I graduated in 2010. I was also a political science minor in addition to being a history major. What got me into history, initially I came in wanting to be a political science major, and I took one class with Cynthia Curran, and I really enjoyed it, and I kind of reignited my passion for history in that one, and then I ended up being a history major. I guess that's the simplest way of going about it. In terms of post-grad, I initially was thinking that I wanted to go the PhD route in history, but decided that it was going to be best for burnout purposes to maybe just take a year off, get a job, and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I just took a job, and I ended up at Health Partners in their member services area. And that got a little bit tedious and not really for me. So I ended up stuck with Health Partners, but wanted to get a little bit more into kind of like research and policy focus based on some of my political science background. So I ended up in our appeals area at Health Partners, and I was there for about 5 years, and then ended up going into my master's in public health based on just wanting to get a little bit more of a policy and administration focus to kind of beef up the work that I was doing at Health Partners. And now I am at the state of Minnesota in their Department of Commerce's insurance division. So we regulate 25% of the health insurance market in Minnesota, so any of like the fully insured health insurance products. So it's a good fusion of kind of like research, regulatory work, things like that. And I think that my history degrees really prepared me with that, with the research component, the writing component. It's been so helpful for the job. So primarily what we're doing in my current position is doing outreach and education regarding prevention care and health insurance, non-discrimination health insurance, and then the end goal is enforcement of the health insurance carriers if they have any sort of compliance violations. And that for me, it's kind of just the perfect fusion of my entire degree set.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. And, one of the things, well, I've heard many things that I was happy to hear. So one of them was that y'all had a passion sort of like for maybe history, right? And then you were able to pursue that passion, and so it's one, I think, fantastic lesson for all of us here, not to be afraid to pursue perhaps what really interests us, right, in our own passions. And then what I also loved was that you all mentioned sort of good experiences you had, bad ones, but whether it was good or bad, you learned something about yourself, potentially where you see yourself going in the future. And I think that's awesome as well. And I heard it pop out a little bit, sort of like all the skills that you thought you were gaining through the experiences that you've had here at St. Ben's and St. John's in the classroom, outside of the classroom, visiting another classroom, and wondering why am I there. And so I was hoping that maybe you could talk to us just a bit about what makes somebody successful in your field. Like, what are the skills that you look for perhaps in a coworker and be like, I'm glad I'm working with you, I mean, what do they need?
I'd say working in the museum, historical society field, there's a million different positions you could be at, but something I've been focusing on a lot recently has been exhibit design. And there's actually a lot of creativity in that. There's a lot of research, definitely. Writing, when you're writing exhibit text, you're not writing a full thesis, you're writing 300 words. So trying to figure out, like I've just been doing World War I, the causes of World War I in 300 words is harder than writing 40 pages on something like that. So being able to take information, figure out what's most important from that, and being concise about it. So, and also within that, using evidence. So you come up with an argument, and you use evidence to support this argument for why you think these are the reasons. So I feel like those three: research, the ability to be concise when making an argument, and creativity. When you're designing something, particularly like a museum exhibit, like how are people going to look at this? How are you going to order it? So it's like writing a paper just with objects and exhibit text, and how you're going to actually lay all this stuff out. I guess those are things that probably come in handy for me.
Great. In my role, so Wilderness Inquiry is a nonprofit, and it is making the outdoors accessible to people of all different backgrounds, ages, abilities. And I work with our staffing team, so I have a really human-centric focus and working with people day in and day out, which I absolutely love and also has its inherent challenges. And something I come back to all the time is just that underlying baseline of a hard work ethic. No job is going to be easy all the time. We're always going to have challenges. We're always going to have compromises that we're making. And so that communication with your team and that willingness to get a job done no matter what it is. I read a book by Nick Offerman, plays Ron on Parks and Recreation. But he made a point. He's like, when I hire someone, there's really only one thing, if I could go my own way, I would do one thing. I would put them in a room with a broom and tell them to sweep it. And I was like, where is this going? But he's like, you want the people you hire, regardless of their background or whatever they're doing, you want the people who are, not just going to kind of move the dust around. You want them to pull out the chair, move the table, and really clean the room. And if they're going to do that for that task, imagine what they're going to do for all the other tasks that they're given. They're going to have that hard work ethic. So I think I come back to that a lot. Jobs aren't always glamorous. And so just being willing to take on a task and do it well, no matter what it is. And I've seen that come through a lot in different jobs that I've had, in different roles I've had, and in my coworkers. And the people I love the most are people are just gonna like jump in and get the job done, whatever that looks like at any given moment. So I think that's something I really appreciate in a team.
That's a great answer. I love that. That's what she said. So, yeah, it's hard to not say exactly what you said. I think, yeah, in the industry, I think we all mentioned how we didn't necessarily know what path we we're going to go down. So, I can't remember, it was one of my professors who said, bloom where you're planted. Right? Where you're at, just work hard, do the deal, because you will figure it out. One of the things that, Jonathan, you mentioned, I think we all said, was the passion thing. When I was sitting in your chairs, I was probably like, well, yeah, but what does that mean? How do I create that? That seems overwhelming to me. All these people know what the passion is. I don't have a passion. Like, in retrospect, yeah, I had a passion for what I was doing. But it's hard in the day to say, this is the thing I'm going to cling to as my passion. For those of you who are lucky enough to have it, drive towards that. But where you're at, bloom where you're planted, clean that floor, right, when nobody's looking, because those are the things that get you ahead, because it gives you different opportunities to have someone notice you. It gives you opportunities to say, oh, I actually do, going back to that analogy, I do love cleaning this floor. Maybe that's something I'm going to do, because you don't know, and that's okay. But what's not okay is to say, I'm going to hem and haw and wait for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, this is where you need to be. Go and do this. When I was sitting in your chairs and in the history classes, I didn't assume that I'd be a financial advisor, however many years after I graduated, because that's a long time ago now, or helping new financial advisors, get their businesses going. But I knew wherever I was going to end up, I was going to work hard and figure those things out. So that's the best attribute of what it makes, or my colleagues, the successful ones, are the ones who have a vision, knowing that vision might change a little bit, but working really hard and fighting through it.
I'll add on to that. I didn't think I was going to be a regulator at this point in my life, but here I am. I think there's certain core tenets that I really learned with my college experience, specifically my undergrad experience with regards to history and really kind of just being curious. And that's something that I look for in a coworker too, that wants me to be curious about root causes of things, about structures. And that's such an important part of history, I think, to really understand the context of anything. And basically any job that I've been in so far it's had a heavy research focus. I really needed to understand why something's happening, why it's happening, and quickly to be able to proceed forward with either enacting legislation or regulation, or in this case, when I was back at Health Partners, upholding an appeal, figuring out what's wrong with somebody, things like that. So I'm more interested in seeing people that are also curious about the structures that they're working in. If they're just doing their job daily and it's kind of just pressing the buttons and going through the motions, it's not something that I'm usually interested in working with. But yeah, again, the curiosity is such an important part.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Since one of our Benedictine values is community, I thought I should stop monopolizing the questions and open it up to those of you who are in the community here. Do you have questions or thoughts that you would like to share with our panelists and see what wisdom they have? Yes, please.
If you could give your college self one piece of advice for the future, what would it be?
Only one.
And just so everyone heard, I believe the question was, if you could give your college self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Eat more carrots. No,
It's only
I did a great job with that. I'll jump in. I would say just be active. Get out there. My comments to, when you're, whatever position you're in right away, working hard, because that's how you'll find opportunities. And looking back at my experience, and my brother's right now a sophomore at St. John's, that's all, I tell him that all the time. Just get out there and get active, get involved in clubs, go and do different things if your floor is being active or whatever. Just get out there and learn new things that you wouldn't normally do. Because once you graduate, those things aren't going to be as prevalent. They're not going to be around you. There's not a group of people who are literally planning what activities should we provide to you all when you're out on your own. So get out there, because that's how you find things that you enjoy that you may have no idea. And more importantly, it also helps you to create relationships with people that you wouldn't otherwise meet if you're just staying in your own path.
I would say just keep, almost adding onto that too, keep dabbling in things and be open-minded about what you want to do. I think I had a tendency when I was in college to like lock myself into, I think, this is my major, this is probably what I want to do, and I wasn't really open-minded to the possibilities of anything else. So even if you don't think that you're interested in it, go learn something new. I don't know. That's probably my biggest piece of advice I'd give myself. I don't know if I would have taken it back then, but
I would probably say to myself, look at internships and volunteering a bit more. That's something I actually really didn't do at all in college. But also not freak out if you don't do that much of it, because I've gotten to where I am without doing that in college, but I would have been exposed to a lot more had I gone out and volunteered or just got an internship in whatever I was interested in at the time. It gets you on a different track, and it always looks good on applications and resumes too, so it doesn't hurt that way.
Yeah, I'll echo as well. I think my perspective and horizons have been broadened a lot by just trying new things and pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, which is something like I talk a lot about in the work that I do. We have like a comfort zone that we like to stay in, and then we have kind of a stretch zone where we should like try and push ourselves, try some new things. Maybe it's not something you've thought of before. The last ring is kind of like the panic zone, and maybe we shouldn't like push ourselves that far. So like don't feel like obligated to have to do things that you're really uncomfortable with, but like try and push yourself to stretch a bit more and try some new things. Because I think you can gain a really broad variety of things that you might not know that you would like. And I think I try and like intentionally ask myself once a day, maybe once a week, more like it, if like, am I happy with what I'm doing? That doesn't mean it's always easy. Like sometimes you have really bad weeks or months or years. Like it can be really hard, but like, is what I'm doing fulfilling me in some way? Like, am I being kind of filled up by what I'm doing in some regard? And if I'm not, like, what's something that I can reach out to? What's something that I can kind of bring in that kind of gives me that aspect that maybe I'm missing somewhere. So take that time to like reflect too on where you're at and what's there and what might be missing as well. So.
Excellent. Another question? Yes, please.
This is a little bit more specific than that last question, but have you encountered any challenges finding jobs because of your major? And then if so, what were they?
Oh, excellent. And let me just repeat it for the camera. Have you, so the question was, have you experienced any challenges finding jobs because of your major? And if so, what were they? And then if it's okay, could I add on too, how'd you overcome those challenges?
I haven't encountered that. I think maybe that like speaks to where like I applied for jobs or things like that, but it never seemed to be. I don't know that I've ever actually in an interview or in a job had someone ask me directly about my history major specifically, more just kind of my broad educational experience. So I never kind of quite encountered that, and I think that speaks to a piece of advice I was given recently after I graduated, which was like, never be afraid to apply, which makes a lot of sense. Like within the realm of like realism, like I probably shouldn't apply to be a brain surgeon, but like within like my realm of being, like why not apply? Like I wouldn't let like your major, pre-described path or whatever it may be hold you back from like a job that you think, hey, I'm interested in that and I think I'd be good at it. Give it a shot. The worst they can say is no, and then you're exactly where you were before. So I think like, why not take that shot? And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given. So yeah, never let your major hold you back in any way. Give it a go.
I would say that I'm in the same boat. I haven't had anybody see my history major and be like, oh, well, no, thank you. Really, if anything, I think history majors are attractive because if they know anything about history, they know that you're research oriented. You can write well. You can argue well. Is why a lot of history majors go on to be lawyers too. They can use evidence based research to make an argument. I would say sometimes that if you want to work in history itself, it can be sometimes challenging to find a job if you want to find very specific jobs, because some museums that are rolling in money all the time, so you might be in a little bit of a rat race for that. Otherwise, no, I wouldn't say that history's ever been a hindrance to my job applications.
I concur.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I have not encountered. Sometimes it's a delightful interviewing topic. So you can just talk about anything with someone. I think the liberal arts education really prepares you to. Oftentimes, if you're just choosing a field that you maybe are haphazardly interested in to get into in the workforce, it's certainly not a hindrance. And they're going to look at, you had a liberal arts education, you can do the following things, you're probably fine. Frankly, let's get my train on there. But yeah, it was not a hindrance at all. It might not seem necessarily applicable to exactly what field you're trying to get into, but it is in ways that you might not immediately know it. And again, it's not been a hindrance for me. It's been pretty helpful.
I think actually employers want to hear why you picked it. You have that passion, and don't be embarrassed about your major, but say why you picked it. That's probably what do you have some passion and initiative for it versus there's a right or wrong major to have.
That's actually, it's interesting because when most interviewers see history on the roster, it's like, oh, I love history. That's one of the most common things, and then they'll go on to why they're passionate about it. So it's a really good connector, actually, for me. And you sit there like, oh, okay, cool. Do we have any more connections? But yeah.
I think history too is like such a strong backbone for everything. Like, right? Everything we do is centered in some way around history. Like, someone had to write it down, someone had to say it. Like, everything's centered on history. So, it gives you just that spectrum of like understanding people's stories and how people interact and how that might influence different pieces of what you're working on. And I think just in a background, like it just creates such a wide exposure to topics you might be speaking about in a wide variety of professions.
Even I guess adding on to that, even if you don't foresee yourself being, a professor or something that you associate, you have to be a history major for this. The fact that if you enjoy it and you like it, I think that just enhances your overall experience. So if you're enjoying going to class and what you're doing, I think it allows you to then say, hey, I'm going to join this group, or I'm going to go do this. And then it enhances your overall college experience, which then really helps out when you're having these conversations with somebody. Like, the history major really didn't come up when I was applying for my first job, right? They saw that I was a graduate, and I could talk about it and what I enjoyed about it and my experience, and that was the important part of it.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Do we have another question?
As someone who doesn't really know what they want to do with their life, kind of like what they want to do for a major, do you have any advice? Kind of, I don't know if that was asked already. I just got here. And also, Brandon, nice beard, must run in the family.
Brother.
Yes. So the question.
I've already told him the answer to this.
Words of wisdom for those of us who are still, well, not still, but discovering our own passions, interests, and our futures. And just as an old person, I would say, be comfortable with that, because you might not grow out of it. At least in my case. But be more interested to hear what our panelists think.
That's a very pertinent question. I mean, when I graduated with history degree, I didn't even really know what exactly I wanted to do. And throughout college, I was asking those questions. And there's still times in my life where am I doing what I want to do? And right now, yes, I am. But you're in a great position right here at a liberal arts school where you get you have so much opportunity to explore whatever field you're really interested in. That doesn't have to be history; it can be whatever. And as long as you feel fulfilled in finding something you can feel fulfilled in doing, you're not on the wrong path. And just kind of know that at any point in your life, you can feel that you're not maybe doing the right thing. But I don't know. There's no bad experiences here, I don't think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, welcome to the club. Like, I don't know that ever ends. But I mean, like, I sent my mom a text message the other day. I was like, you forgot to give me the manual on like how to be an adult. Like, when do I grow up? Or like, you know, when does this click? And she's like, just no, it doesn't. And I think like you can find multiple paths too. So like, I might be at a point now where like I feel like, yeah, this is all coming together. I'm in the like career I want to be in. Like, it all fits. And I think there's probably a really low probability that that will fit for the next 50 years of my life. Like, that's probably going to alter and change. So I think like just being open to that and like enjoying the ride you're on in life, like, and finding those pockets and moments when you are connecting or really do love what you're doing, and just like appreciating that. And assessing it as you go, because I don't know that it ever fully ends or fully clicks in, but I think you'll have that as you go along in a variety of situations.
Well, Ethan. I guess the biggest things that come to mind are, one, you mentioned it, is curiosity. So being comfortable, being curious, asking questions, and learning things. Second is just hard work. What I said earlier, bloom where you're planted. Just work hard wherever you're at, because that's gonna help you provide some clarity for yourself. And the other thing is making decisions based on what you know today. Things will change. We have to be comfortable with that fact. But we want to make sure you're making the decisions based on what you see clearly today, because it may not get you to your final destination, but if you're really clear on something and you work towards it, it's going to get you to the place that you need to be to make your next decision. And then lastly, I would say be professionally selfish. So it's okay to ask questions when you have them. It's okay to not put away, maybe no one else is thinking this, right? Be the first person to ask a question in the room, because if you need to know the answer for yourself, ask it. It's okay. You know, as long as we're morally and ethically fine, be professionally selfish around yourself to make sure you're getting what you need, so you can get to the places that you're going to be by design rather than default, and you're ending up somewhere in 10 years and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, don't be afraid to be excited about something that you want to major in, frankly. And my other point would be that I think this is not the end. I mean, I think it's easy when you're getting to the end of the 4 years that it feels like I've got to get my entire life in order. And point, like, I don't feel like you ever really always have it completely in order, and it always feels a little kind of tenuous at best. I mean, sometimes I might wake up in the middle of the night and wonder, maybe I should have done epidemiology or something like that. But I don't regret it at all, actually, my history major, and I frankly think it did give a really good foundation. And knowing that, not to belabor my liberal arts point, that, I mean, you're going to have a solid liberal arts education, so you should do what you enjoy within that education.
What I was going to say is a lot of my family, like, I've actually considered possibly becoming a history major, and a lot of my family, when I say that to them, they're like, well, what are you going to do with that? Like, how do you personally answer that, and, like, how do you, like, just kind of, like, what is your process of thinking when it comes to, like, that kind of thing?
Dazzle them with knowledge.
But, like, do you get that question at all ever, or not really?
So our question was, you know, if I talk to people and say, I want to major in history, these folks respond and say, why? What would you do with that? And it's a great question because it's bringing me flashbacks. So I appreciate learning how I should approach that conversation properly.
The next time you see your mom.
Yeah.
That's a question I'm sure we've all heard. And when I was even getting a master's in history, people were like, "Oh, are you just gonna be a teacher?" And you don't have to be a teacher if you get a major, master's, PhD in history. There's so many things, as you can see. I'm the only one actively working in history on this panel. You can end up anywhere and be entirely fulfilled. History sets you up to work in way more fields than just studying the past. Although that's what I love doing. I focused in public history, which is a very broad field. It's pretty much anything that's not academic history. You can museum work, archivy, you can tour guide type stuff, and that's just a tiny, tiny bit. There's so many jobs within the historical field that it's kind of hard to just put pen down. You might even know, going in history is I want to be a professor. And that might not pan out for you, but you're still set up for so many other jobs. And just kind of going back to that last question, is you're still set up. You still have all this experience that is applicable to so many other fields, and you might not even know what those fields are right now. You probably don't, but they come in handy. And you also, if you're really passionate in history and that's something you want to do, you get that experience of doing something you wanted to do and not wondering if, I really wish I would have taken my time and done something I was really personally interested in. You're never going to regret getting a degree in history.
Yeah, I think my history degree has set me up just with such a wide variety of experience that you can almost work in anything. I think even back to all the jobs I've had have in some way related to history, because again, I think just that backbone of human interaction and stories and information that's been passed down. So even when I was nannying, you could very arguably say well, that doesn't have anything to do with a history degree. Well, when a 3-year-old's throwing a tantrum and you're reading through the parenting book, trying to find solutions, I'm delving into history there, that's a really kind of broad scale example, but I don't think I ever had an answer for that. I might not still have an answer for that when I choose a new path or career, but it always somehow becomes really clear to me when I'm working in a position how history is influencing that. So in my current position now, it's working with people and it's understanding how their stories impact and influence them and kind of the world around them. I'm also training people to teach on history of the environment and how our places affect us and how we affect our places. And I never could have given that answer in college, and I probably, if I took another position, wouldn't be able to come up with the answer right there, right then, but it always emerges out of that. I'm always using the skills that I learned here to kind of draw on history or stories to create and work really hard in my position.
So I guess I've got a couple tactics maybe. If you just don't want them to ask you the question and you want to tell them something you think that will impress them, so I'm getting a history major so I can go to law school. Then they're like, oh, that's a great idea. But what I would say for you, for the biggest thing, I think there's truth to that. If you just want to avoid the conversation. For you, I would say, if there's a real clear vision of why you want to, and it's okay if there isn't, but if there's a really clear vision, just share that with them. The next step is my personal experience. I would tell you if you really enjoy it and you like the field and you want to embrace yourself in your education, a really excited, talented history major who gets good grades is going to be a much better job candidate than a accounting major who kind of hated their life for 4 years. So really go into it saying, if this is what I want to do, I'm going to go really hard at it, because those attributes, the attributes of being committed to something and working hard, it's okay if you don't know what path you're going to end up, but those things that you build and the strength that you build in yourself and the confidence in yourself, it's going to serve you well wherever you end up. So I would just stay true to it. Again, if you have a real clear focus, tell them that's why. I still get it. Oh, you're a history major? How did that happen? I said, well, I did it because I enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things that are applicable to my daily life, but ultimately I enjoyed it and I learned a lot about myself, which allowed me to find my path. That's guess that'd be my advice.
I'm also a proponent of the kind of two-tiered method. You have avoid it or kind of explain your passion about it. I mean, it really the degree really sets you up for so many like good skill sets. The researching, the writing, you're gonna be good, and you can tell somebody that like I think I'll be just fine with this. You can really talk about what excites you about the degree, frankly, and it's your passion. Can certainly explain that. I don't have much more to add to what anyone else said. It's the joy of being last, I guess.
For my role in the Experience and Professional Development Office, formerly Career Services, we often work with students about how to talk about that, and realizing that you don't have to have things down in concrete. You could say what you're exploring, why you're interested in something, and say, and I want to explore some options in other things. We also have web resources for all the majors that are at St. Ben's and St. John's. So if you wanted to see what other people have done with history or bio or English or whatever, we can show you some of those ideas, because those might be the places where you start to explore for yourself what might be interesting. So there's lots of resources.
And great advice, and we're very fortunate, right, to have an XPD office not on one campus, but on two campuses, so it's fantastic. So you'd be able to explore all of the resources that Experience in Professional Development has. And another thing, too, if I could just add what I was thinking, when I was in college, I don't think I'd be able to answer the question very well. I think I just said, I just want to do what I want, and you will support me. And that works when you're an only child. But now that I'm older, I think like the responses that our panelists were given also connect with other majors that aren't history. I'm thinking like if I was a theology major, I could make the same argument. If I was an English major, I could make a similar argument. If I was part of a liberal arts major that supposedly don't prepare people for a direct career path, but prepare them for many career paths, that's what makes it scary. Because from my perspective, it seems like we always like to find a way to put ourselves in a box or to put other people in a box so I can say, I know who you are and whatnot. But now, I think as a history major or somebody who just loves liberal arts, it's quite clear what I could argue with these parents or other people who might not understand. First I tell them I learned how to think critically, and if you don't know what it means to think critically, it means that I ask questions about everything, such as why is the room set up this way? Not, questions like that are silly, but if we rechange the room, we can rechange our whole experience here and ask questions about that. I can communicate fairly clearly when I speak. I can probably communicate a little bit more clearly when I write, because I can spend a lot more time revising it and making sure that I say what I want to say. Likewise, I can solve complex problems. I study the creation of mass incarceration in the United States. Talk about a complex problem that people haven't been able to solve for over 200 years. And they constantly go back to the same solutions that have never worked. So there's one way I can bring some expertise. Likewise, I have a pretty broad perspective where, I don't know, those of you who study the past, those people are weird. I think they are, because I studied the 18th century and the early 19th century. They are completely different than me. And I have to figure out, how do they tick? How do I understand them? I want to write a history, if they had the opportunity to come back to life and read what I wrote, that they would see themselves in it, right? And it's the same deal. Like, you want to be able to empathize with others, understand them on their own terms. Likewise, I think, too, that the research skills that the folks are talking about, it's fantastic. Or people who take a lower division class with me read a ridiculously old article by a man named Carl Becker called Every Man His Own Historian. And I mean, now, of course, we don't limit the historical profession just to men, as they did in Becker's time. But pretty much everyone has to be a historian in a way. Like, how do you know where to go? How do you know to show up here? Did you do a little research in your own little archive? How do you solve problems, right? I mean, so pretty much you can ask people, well, how do you survive today. Figure out where you got to be, what you need to do. Well, that's perhaps what a history degree provides you with, those skills. Or maybe that's what an English degree does, or perhaps a theology degree, or all these other fantastic liberal arts degrees at our institutions that prepare people not just for like one job, but perhaps for the job of trying to live in a way that when they die, they can be happy and say, that's the life I lived. Likewise, their family and friends will actually show up at their funeral. So I think that would be fantastic. What other questions do we have? I haven't heard any from this side. Yes.
So I don't really know how to frame this question, but like, what advice would you give to someone if they're like on the fence of minoring or majoring in history?
So the question was, what advice do you have for somebody who is on the fence and not quite sure? Do I major? Do I minor? Or who knows? Maybe there's a third option.
Andy, you want to start
Oh,
down there?
okay.
You can put the first up.
It's the one I didn't have a good answer to. I would say if you have even a perfunctory interest in it, and maybe this is maybe for the minor argument of it. If you do have an interest in history and you can incorporate it into your schedule with like what you want to major in, maybe major in biology, I don't know. But certainly do it if you can do that. For the major, going back to our earlier points of, is this something that you are passionate about or want to do? You can certainly create a career out of it in a bunch of kind of versatile different ways. So, just really kind of analyze your passion on that.
Yeah, it's got to be true to you. I would say use your resources. So coming to something like this, reaching out to people who have gone down that path, leveraging experience and professional development because that's why it's there, right? Getting in there and learning things and asking questions. And I'm assuming you have, but take the classes, right? Get in there, see if you enjoy the content and the process by which you learn. Learn by doing. So.
Yeah, I think looking at the options that you have, maybe this is weird, but I loved looking through the course catalog and ooh, what is this class about? What's this class about? Not even in history, but in other fields too. And maybe determining, okay, how many classes do I need for a minor versus a major? Do I see enough of those that pique my interest, or do I see more in psychology or English or whatever it may be? So I think that could even be one simple task to kind of look through and see, is there enough here that would keep me fascinated, and do I feel excited about that? And I think that would kind of be my first step into figuring out if there might be that difference between major and minor.
That's a fantastic piece of advice, actually. I would say, if anything, a minor in history is always going to be a good supplement in whatever major you do have. It depends on the person. Obviously, I can't speak for you or anybody else in the room. Be like, you need to get a history major. That has to be something that you really do decide. And the best way to do that is just taking a few classes. And if you really do appreciate the kinds of classes you're getting, the kinds of information you're learning, and the skills you're learning, I think that's probably your best real decider. Like we were saying, don't worry about, what am I going to do with a history degree? I think we've already covered that well enough. There's so many career fields you can go into with that, with the skills you'll learn in history. But if you don't want to go the full way with a full degree, minors, you're still going to get a lot of these skills and a lot of focus that will help you in the future. And there's still, you can list a minor on a resume, and that's still somebody, I love history. Someone's going to say that. And it's a great opener. But yeah, that's my advice.
Well, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Who would like to have the last question?
They flee.
It's your turn.
I have a question. Then you all mentioned in some way uncertainty, that even after graduation was uncertain. And I think that's there's a lot of anxiety in students choosing a major because it's uncertain. How did you deal with uncertainty when you were 20 years old, and how do you deal with uncertainty now?
That's a great question.
The question was about uncertainty. How do you grapple with uncertainty? How do you deal with it? Panelists.
I think like to tie it all back. I think I use my history, like my personal history, like my experiences. I think you gain more and more of those as you get older and older. That doesn't make uncertainty easier by any means, but it gives you a few more tools. You were talking about critical thinking. I think you gain all of these skills and just kind of more mechanisms for how to grapple with those uncertainties, or you kind of have that feeling like, okay, I've been here before. This is what I did before. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. And so I think I use my personal experiences and draw on those to kind of try and bring it to focus a little bit more. And again, that doesn't mean that it makes it easier or anything, but I think I have more tools at my disposal the further I get along, just to kind of try different things and try and kind of work through that process.
As a 20-year-old, I ran away from uncertainty. I went to certainty of what I knew, and that I've said it a few times of using a resource. That's the thing that I wish I would have done more of. It's okay to feel like you don't know, because nobody really knows. We've said that a lot of times. But what I would say is probably not okay is to just retreat upon yourself and just stick into the same path that you've always done. So what I wish I could have told myself, and how I wish I would have done it differently, is just embrace it, lean into it, and learn more. Because I will guarantee you, the beast of uncertainty that you create in your mind is next to nothing, right? But you don't know. I still deal with that today. I think I do a better job of leaning into those things and understanding, because of the experiences that I've had, that no matter what I dream up, this thing that I don't know is going to be significantly easier to get through and not as challenging. But they'll still things because we're all human. But yeah, lean into it, embrace it, ask questions, use your resources, and be okay not knowing, because you'll get to a different place and it'll just be not where you were, but it'll get you to the place that you want to be. Whether you know what or not.
I'd second uncertainty never really leaves. It's just kind of how you deal with it that changes. If my 20-year-old self probably just wanted to choose something, and again, I don't regret it, but I think the benefit of continuing to add more and more experience to what you're doing gives you a lot more steps on how to frankly deal with that uncertainty. So go back to an earlier point, get out there and dabble to get some more experiences, do some more events, learn some new things. Make that uncertainty, I guess, a little bit more comfortable.
I guess, my 20-year-old self part of it, how I dealt with uncertainty was just telling myself, I know I'm passionate about this thing that I'm doing, which is history. So if anything, I'll get out of this knowing I did something I was really passionate about doing. Uncertainty today, like I said, it never really goes away. But just knowing that as long as you're doing something you're passionate about, things will fall in place. And if you work hard for them, they definitely will.
Well, I think that's a fitting spot for us to conclude. So, thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Andy. Our panelists will be available to chat with you all if you would like to chat with them individually. And they'll meet you sort of in that lobby-ish area by the Clemens Perk. So before we depart, will you please join me in thanking our guests?